Hi everyone, I'm Nandini and I'm a professional makeup artist. Whenever I'm doing someone's makeup, I always like to start with cleansing their skin first. Because no matter what people say, like usually they come in with their skin prepped and they do their own moisturizer and everything. But still, I like to do my own skin prep with my products. The reason I do this is because sometimes people's skincare that they have done at home by themselves doesn't always react well with the primers that you might use, with the foundation that you might use. So it's always better to do your own skin prep that you know will work with your products. After I'm done cleansing her skin, I'm starting with her skin prep. Because Shrishta's skin is a bit dry, so I'm going in with a toner first. I'm using the Laniege Cream Peptide Toner. This toner is amazing for dry skin, and they also advertise it as a moisturizer, so it really does give the skin that hydration. I make sure I'll take the toner everywhere and no part of the skin is left. For lips, I just give Shrishta some Vaseline that she here is putting herself, and that's usually enough for hydration. For my moisturizer, I'm using Emolene. I honestly love this product. I love it for oily skin as well because it just provides skin with hydration. It does not make the skin greasy. It is not oily at all. I make sure that I take the moisturizer everywhere on the face, right under her eyes, around her mouth, on her neck, on her nose, that no area of the face is missed. I massage it really well into the skin. I do this to ensure that no part of her face is left dehydrated and every part has even moisture. I'm taking a clean Q-tip to clean her brows. I'm doing this to make sure there is no greasiness or extra moisture in the brows. I'm gonna be using a powder product to fill her brows, so what this step does is it ensures that the powder will stick to her skin. After that, I take a clean spoolie to just brush the brows up and to check where I need to fill them. I usually don't like to overly fill the brows. I always like to keep them as natural as possible. So what this step does is it helps me to see where there are any sparse areas. I picked two colors on my angle brush, that was black and grey. Her hair is black, but if you directly go in with a black powder, that might be too intense. So it's always better to mix it. You can see I start with the corners. I don't directly want to go in the center of the brows because the product on the brush might be a bit much, so you always want to start with the edges. After I'm satisfied with the edges, I'm taking some more product on my brush and you can see that I'm going in feather like strokes. I do this to ensure that there are no harsh lines, and I always try to keep the angle of my strokes as the same as the angle of the hair growth itself. So for the front I usually take my brush in an upward motion and for the side in a slanted way. I again take a clean spoolie to brush the brows. I do this step again and again to make sure that the brow powder is not harsh and the lines are not harsh. I start with repeating the same process on the other brow. I try my best to match the brows, but you have to remember that the brows are gonna be hardly ever completely identical. I really like the laminated brow look. To do that, what I do is I brush the brows up with the product first, and from the flat side of the brush, if you don't have a brush like mine, you can just use a spatula. I lay them on the skin. So my goal is going in that all the hair are standing up. They are brushed up. At the same time they are sticking to the skin and there are no sparse areas left. The entire look should be cohesive. After I'm satisfied with this brow, I move on to the other side. You can already see the difference. After completing the brows, I'm going again with a clean because when you're putting a gel like mine, it tends to come on the skin, and then that gel usually becomes flaky, so it's important to clean it up. For the eyes, I'm using a concealer by Too Faced and it's the shade Sand. I just took some on my brush and I'm spreading it on the lid. I do that on both the sides. Just tapping it in with my finger to blend it. After that, I'm just using a loose powder to set the concealer in place. This is a very important step because if you directly go in with the shadow after this, it might become patchy. For the eyes, we are keeping the entire thing very natural. So for that, I use a transition shade that is close to her skin. I just try to sculpt her eye shape with that and build the intensity slowly. I do all the steps on both the eyes simultaneously. This makes sure that both of my eyes looks identical. If not identical, at least very close. I take a very small amount of product on my brush and build the intensity layer by layer. I do this to ensure that the eyeshadow doesn't get muddy. Personally, I feel that makeup should always be built in layers. If you go in with a lot of product directly, that it always ends up becoming patchy or muddy in some way. So I always ensure that I go step by step and layer by layer. Now again I'm taking a deeper shade on a smaller brush and putting it on her outer corner and just taking it into the crease from the outer V and again building the intensity. I am doing this a little beneath the transition shade. Again repeating the same process on the other eye step by step. I once again take my bigger blending brush which had the transition shade to make sure there are no harsh lines. Whenever you're doing makeup, if you feel like there are harsh lines and you put too much color, you can just take a big fluffy blending brush and just blend it all out. Because the type of makeup that we are trying to achieve is a little bit monochromatic. For that I take this blush pink color, it's a bit muted, you can see it's not very bright pink, and I take it on a smaller blending brush and I again put it all around her crease and on the outer V of the eye. This helps me to soften that brown tone. We need to give the eyes some definition because we are doing a very light eyeshadow. For that I am using this brown kajal pencil by Color Bar. I really like this pencil because it's so creamy. You can easily blend it, but once it sets, it doesn't move. So you know it will not smudge after you are done spreading it and it sets. You can see my placement. I take the pencil and place it right near the lash line. It doesn't have to be perfect, you can just make a rough line. That is because we are gonna smudge it anyways. Make sure you smudge it right after you put the eye pencil because it sets pretty fast. As you can see, we have not really used a color on the center of the eye. So to give the eyelid some dimension, I'm using a champagne sort of shade on a big fluffy brush and just brushing it on the center. What this helps to do is the light catches on the center of the lid, and because we have put a bit deeper shade on the outer corner, it really sculpts the eye. I'm not doing anything else on the eyes because again, as I mentioned earlier, we are keeping the entire thing pretty natural, but because of the steps that we have done for the eye, it still sculpts the eye and gives it definition. To start the base, I am again taking some micellar water on a cotton pad and cleaning under the eyes because there is always fallout in my opinion. You can control it as much as you like, but some sort of fallout is always there. So I always like to clean the under eye again and prep the skin again. I know I prepped the skin before doing the eyes as well, but I put moisturizer again after doing the eyes. To some of you, it might seem pointless to do the skin prep before we did the eyes. But because we left the moisturizer sit on the skin for so long, it really penetrated deep in the skin and really gave the skin some hydration. So now again, if you're putting moisturizer on top, it will ensure all day hydration under all the makeup. To prime the skin, I'm using the NYX Honeydew Primer. It's a very hydrating primer. So for Shrestha skin type, it's perfect. To shade match the foundation, I always like to check on the jawline and sometimes on the collarbone as well, because it's quite often that someone's face and the rest of their body's skin doesn't match, and that is completely normal. But to ensure that your foundation matches spot on, this step is necessary. Using an orange corrector by LA Girl to correct under her eyes, and I'm taking whatever is remaining on my brush on her forehead and around her mouth as well. I like to tap everything with my fingers. I like to use my hands as much as I can for the makeup process because it really helps to melt the foundation and the concealers into the skin. I'm using a foundation by MAC in the shade NC37, but as you might know that MAC's foundations runs pretty orange. So to neutralize that orangeness of the foundation, I'm using a blue color corrector by ELF. As you can see that Shrestha has more olive to yellow undertone instead of more red. So adding the blue helps to achieve that olive undertone. I'm using the back of my hands to mix everything. If you are also doing this, make sure you have sanitized your hands well in advance. I'm just using a concealer brush by PAC. It's a bit fluffy and I really like to use this to buff the product in. I start from the outer side of the face and go towards the center because the most product in my brush would be when I initially apply it. So it's better to go on the outer side of the face and take it slowly inside. Also, a very important step for me is to make sure that I take the foundation right up till the hairline, because usually you can see sometimes that the makeup artist has applied the foundation and there's a line on the forehead where you can see where the scalp begins and the foundation starts. Just buffing the product into the skin to make sure there are no streak lines left by the bristles, and taking it down the neck, around the mouth, so no areas is missed. I want the coverage to not show a lot, so to do that I am taking my brush and cleaning it on a dry tissue to get the excess product off, and then again going in with the buffing process. To further blend the foundation into the skin, I rub my palms together to make sure they are warm and start to tap it in. You can see how I am pressing the foundation into the skin. For the concealer, I want to make sure that it matches the skin perfectly. For that, I am using the shade Sand by Too Faced. I have taken that product up on the brush that I used previously on the lids, and again putting it right below the eyes where I need the most coverage, and doing it on both the eyes. Again using the tapping motion with my finger to blend the product into the skin. This is all we are gonna do for coverage. To contour, I'm using a couple of shades from a concealer palette by NYX and mixing them back on my hand. There is some blue pigment left from the corrector earlier, So this helps to get that grey undertone for a contour. You can see that I am putting it right above her cheekbone and not below. If you put the contour below the cheekbone, it does the opposite effect of what we want to do. Instead of lifting the face up, it drags the face down because placement is very necessary with contour and highlight. I take the remaining product down on her jawline and also on her forehead because I don't really need to contour, I just need to bronze the face. For that I don't use more excess product. Just whatever is remaining on my brush is sufficient for that. You can see what a difference just this one step can make in the entire look. For blush I'm using a very light shade by Nude Stick. I will mention everything in the description. Here the placement is very different than contour. I am taking the blush in the center of her face because we want to give her an appearance of fuller cheeks. Placement with blush is also very important. You can see I am using more tapping motion with the brush instead of dragging it. This helps to maintain the intensity of the product. Just tapping everything in again with my fingers to make it look more seamless. I'm using one more shade of blush which is a bit deeper than the shade we used below for more dimension. For the center of the face, we will keep that light shade. Just for the outer side of the face, I'm using this deeper shade. Earlier we used a concealer that matched her skin tone perfectly, but to highlight the face I'm using a concealer now which is a couple of shades lighter than her skin tone. I will just put it on the inner corner of the eye and the outer corner of the eye. I will not put it in the center. Whatever I've put on the inner corner is more than sufficient for the center as I blend it. Whenever you put the concealer on the outer corner, it gives the eye a lifted effect and lifts the entire face as well. You can see what a little amount of highlighting shade did to the face. I'm taking a loose powder by Kryolan on a fluffy brush and just tapping it into the face. I don't put it everywhere. Just below the eyes I put it generously and on the rest of the face I just brush it. Do this because Shrestha has dry skin, so she doesn't need a lot of powder, it will further dry her face more. And because we have done our skin prep well, the foundation will not budge. One more thing to keep in mind that if you are doing a shoot makeup, you are probably there to do touch-ups the entire day. Even if something moves, you can correct it there. I'm taking some more bronzer on a fluffy angled brush and placing it right where I placed my cream bronzer. I am doing the same steps with blush. Like I mentioned earlier that I like to build everything in layers. So we put 2 thin layers of blush earlier and now I am putting the third layer on top. For highlighting I am using a cream highlighter by Nude Sticks again. Because we want to give a skin like sheen, I am not using a powder highlighter or any highlighter that has shimmer in it. This highlighter is very good to give that skin like glow. I know it is the common notion that you shouldn't put cream products on top of powder, but again if you're layering everything right you can. Cause this cream highlighter has a tendency to move. If you put it on a dry base, then it will stay. Again just taking my blush brush, placing it in the center of the face and on top of the nose to give that sun-kissed look. I am using the same flat brush as earlier and taking some brown shadow and placing it on the lower lash line. This will define the eyes further because we are not using any sort of kohl. This is a very important step and you should never forget to do eyeshadow on the lower lash line as well. I'm using one more highlighting shade and placing it on the inner corner for that glow. It opens up the eyes even more. Finally, I'm gonna set the face, and we do mascara and lipstick off camera, and here is the final look. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, subscribe.